Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to present Inkle woven dog collars and provide some weaving and sewing tips. Right beside me right now I have my lovely dog Caviar, and she's got a lovely hand woven dog collar on, and they're a really strong, durable collar, and they're long lasting with great colors, and it's a great project to do. So let's get started. So this isn't to replace other do-it-yourself videos. There's loads of them on YouTube that can give you how to sew a dog collar, but mostly I want to focus on the things that make an Inkle woven dog collar a little bit different, and some of the tips that I've learned over the years. So let's start off with some of the weaving tips. I've got my Inkle loom set up here, and I've got 33 threads on here. So I've got 17 that are heddled, and I've got 16 that are unheddled, and that's the width I need for a 1-inch strap. The material that I'm using is mercerized cotton. It is a 3/2 width. I think in the US they call it 2/3, so it's the thickest mercerized cotton I can get. But when I'm putting this on, I double up the threads for the thickness I want. So you can see here the heddled thread, there's 2, and for the unheddled there are 2. It's beautiful yarn, it's long lasting, it keeps its color. The important thing you always have to remember with weaving dog collars is that you want to make sure that you keep the width of your band consistent so that it can fit easily in your 1-inch hardware. So I always have a measuring tape attached to my Inkle loom, and after I weave 5 or 6 passes, I just always go along and check to make sure my width is consistent. The other thing, once you have finished weaving your band, is to soak it in water. I use about a teaspoon of salt in a bowl of cold water and let it soak for at least 2 or 3 hours. That'll pre-shrink your band, and also tighten up make sure that the colors don't bleed, and let that roll. Once you take it out of the soaking, I either put in a spin dryer in the washing machine to get the excess water out, or roll in a towel and hang to dry. So here is the hardware that you're going to need. You need a 1-inch side release buckle that's contoured, which is nice for the neck of the dog. And you're going to need a 1-inch adjustment slide and a welded 1-inch D-ring. There's other hardware they can use. This plastic adjustment slide with wide mouth, it's really nice. And I've recently purchased some brass finish hardware, and I didn't realize how heavy this was. It's at least 3 times heavier than the plastic buckle. Very sturdy looking, but I think I would reserve this for a larger dog. This one has the black hardware in it. You can see with the black adjustment slider, it works really well. But you can see with the 1-inch band, particularly with the buckle, that you need to keep it 1 inch wide, because if it's too wide, it'll be difficult to put through your hardware and be able to adjust to make it adjustable. So that's for your hardware and your material. Of course, you need your band, and roughly it's measuring your collar length of your dog. So for Caviar, it'd be about 15 inches, and I'd add on an extra 10 inches to make it adjustable. And it's not an exact length because it is adjustable, gives or take. Now for your other supplies, you're going to need your measuring tape. I use polyester all-purpose thread, not cotton. And you're going to need denim needles for your sewing machine. And I do a combination of hand sewing, so just your basic sewing needle, And that's your basic supplies that you need there, plus your thread scissors and trim scissors. Okay, so I think that's the weaving considerations there. Let's go over to the sewing machine. Excuse me. There we go. So here I'm at my sewing machine here. What I've got here is a heavy-duty domestic sewing machine. It's not a fancy or expensive machine, but it's got a strong motor that can sew through Inkle woven bands. If you haven't got a machine or you're about to purchase one, I would take an Inkle woven band with you to the to where you're going to purchase a machine. Show them what you're going to be sewing so you can try out a machine, make sure it works well for you. The first thing we're going to look at is how to finish off your bands. And I use a stretch stitch or an overlap stitch, and this is the one I use here. I don't know if you can zoom in there, Keith. So that's it, sort of enlarged. So it's got sort of a line there and a line there, and that zigzag there holds in the rough edges of your band. So I'm going to show you on this scrap piece how I finish off my Inkle bands. I go to the middle of the band and I put the needle through the middle, press your foot down, and I'm going to go to my stretch stitch. I'm going to have about a 2-3 width. So you go right down to the stretch stitch there, and this is the stitch that I showed you on this diagram. There's that there. Starting in the middle, I'm going to reverse to the edge. Then I'm going to go forward, past the middle where I started, go out to the other edge, and then go back to the middle where I started. Then release that, and I love these, love these little thread scissors. And then finish off your, cut off those loose ends there. Pull them a little tight. Okay, there we go. I don't know if you can see the stitching there. I've used a black thread to hopefully show that up. And then I will use my trim scissors and trim it as close to the sewed edge as I can. And that gives you a nice, neat edge. So you do that with both ends of your Inkle band that you're going to use for your collar. Okay. So once you've got that done, the next thing I do is you go back to your straight stitch, and then I tuck in the ends. It's kind of like a little V shape there. I tuck them in and sew it across so it looks like that. It is a little tricky because it's so thick. So when you press that in there, pop your needle in the middle again as you did before, and then sew a little bit across the middle and back to your starting place, and then you're ready to put on your adjustment slide. So the first thing you do is you put on your adjustment slide. You have the right side on your work surface, and then you come up through your adjustment slide and through there. And I usually keep the part that I have to sew on about 2 inches. So then I don't pin things down. I use these little plastic little clips. They're wonderful. Get those at your Sewing Notions store. And with this part here, why I like to hand sew is that when you're using Inkle woven bands, they're thick, and if they're not basted in place, I find that they move and I don't get the finish that I want. So why I want to baste it and hand stitch it is to keep it nicely sewn together, and I tuck the wrong side edge just a little bit behind the right edge, and then I'm going to pass a few going to pass it in here a couple of times because it's very hard to get the sewing machine to that edge, and you want it nice and strong. So I make sure I go through there a couple of times. Once I've got that done, then I can lightly baste, just in and out. Not tight, you know, not too, you don't have, just fairly large stitches, about 1/4 inch long. And what that does, it's going to hold it all in place, ready for you to machine stitch. So you go all the way around, and oops, my dog wants to get involved now. And you stitch all the way down there. And usually this part I don't go all the way through. I just capture it there. And I just really try to really tuck this down nice and flat. I don't sew this under. I don't tuck this around under because I don't want to lump there around near the dog's neck. So you just go around like that, lightly basting it in place until you get back up to this corner, and again, put it through several times to make sure it's nice and tight. Once you've got it basted in place, it's easy now to do your machine stitching. And then I start at this edge right here. I go backwards a little bit, and then I go sew right up to as far as I can go, and then go back down again. And then I release it from here, and then I do the other side. So that's getting that sewn in place. Now the next step that I do is I'm going to do the classic hourglass stitching to stitch in the middle part. And I don't know if you can get a close-up of that, Keith. It's an hourglass, and the purpose why I switched to, this is kind of an ivory color. I never use white thread, but I use this light colored sort of unbleached cotton, and to sew the strengthening stitch in the middle. So again, I would put the needle in right here. I would, in the middle of here, I'd sew to the edge and then back to here. And I sew like a box. I go up to the top as far as I can go, and then I come down where it's comfortable to sew across, where the machine will let you go across. Then up there as far as I can go, and back down again. And then I do the hourglass. I'm going to sew up here. I'm going to go back across here, and then back down to the starting place, and go into the middle and finish there. Then all my finishing threads are in the middle in one place. And that gives you a nice, neat finish. Now you're ready to put on your side release buckle. So you're going to have the wrong side facing upwards. Pass it through, and I like to put on the male end of the buckle first. Some YouTube videos will show either or, but that works best for me. For some reason I like it to start off with that part. And then you slide it down. You can see how tight that is. If you didn't have your 1-inch band nice and neat, it would make it hard to adjust. Then you're going to be adding on the female end of the buckle. You have the right side now facing upward. Always remember you have to have your D-ring on first. It's so easy to start sewing on something and not, because you can't put this D-ring on afterwards. Now you're ready to put on the female part of the buckle. Now for this one, I find I need 3 inches just to make it comfortable for sewing. So you need to make that allowance when you're figuring out the length that you want. Again, you can get your little clips there to keep it in place. 3 inches. Okay. So what again I'm going to do here is just like we did in the other, when we were putting on the adjustment slider, is I'm going to hand baste. the first part in, but I'm only going to go down a 1/2 inch or 1.25 centimeters. Again, starting close to here, tucking in your wrong edge just slightly under the top part, and running the hand basting in there a couple of times, make sure it's strong, and down a 1/2 inch, and then cut it off there, and then go to the other side with your black thread, and sew about that far down. Once you've done that, then you're going to get your white thread or your light colored thread on your sewing machine, and then do 2 rows across. Start in the middle, go to the edge, back, and then go down, and then go across and back again to the edge, and give yourself 2 rows there, and it's going to look like that. I sewed this part in first, then I used a light and sewed the edges with black, then I did the center part with the lighter thread. Then you slide up your D-ring. And again, you're going to, before you do machine sewing, you're going to baste your D-ring in place. And then do the same thing. Once your D-ring is got your a row of the white there going across, then you baste it in with the black, and then again just put your same hourglass stitch there to finish it off, and it'll be tightly in place. So basically that's it for making your dog collar. I hope these sewing and weaving tips will help you have a successful Inkle woven dog collar. Thanks for watching.